ever-evolving digital landscape, for your business to thrive, you must adapt or die. Welcome to Marketing in the Age of AI, the podcast helping you harness the power of AI and marketing tools to revitalize and grow your business. And now here's your host, marketing expert and author of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI, Emmanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI, as we continue to explore how AI is changing our business life, our marketing life, and how the innovations that are happening are irrefutable, irreplaceable, and how we must adapt so that we're staying current with the offers that we make. And have a great chance today to talk with somebody who is helping larger companies work in e-commerce and data analytics. And I'm going to do my best to draw down these lessons from the Fortune 1000 and have them in tools that the rest of us can use, or in assessments that the rest of us can use. Vinod Kumar is my guest today, and he's an expert at the intersection of e-com and data analytics with over 15 years of experience in e-commerce technology. Vinod has worked with iconic brands like L'Oreal and Hugo Boss and New Balance. He's also the co-founder of Cynthium AI and owner of Kushala Sip Coffee House, where he successfully integrated digital technologies to drive business growth. I'm going to explore how Vinod uses data to optimize e-commerce strategies and uncover new opportunities for growth. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today, Vinod.
Thank you for having me, Emmanuel. So glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your expertise. I'm interested to know what's changed in the last 2 or 3 months for you and what you're doing at Cynthium.
Yeah, the last 2, 3 months have been pretty disruptive and innovative in the field that we operate in. We are at the intersection of AI and e-commerce, as you know.
Yeah.
What Cynthium builds is essentially a merchandising engine that's AI native. And what merchandising means has changed dramatically in the last few months, because what has happened is shoppers are now starting to use large language models like ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini to discover products. And these platforms have started integrating both the consideration aspects of a shopper's journey, as well as in some cases the actual checkout process. Some of them are still in demo stages and some of them are actually live. So what this means is the function of merchandising as it exists in the commerce space used to be about only what you do on your brand's website. We typically work with large enterprise customers, large brands, anywhere north of $50 to $100 million in GMV online. And the function of merchandising used to be very focused on what you can do on site. But now it seems like the quote unquote funnel is dramatically changing, where the product consideration aspect of the shopper journey is moving offsite to these large language models. So what that means is merchandising as a function has to change, has to consider how do I merchandise and help shoppers find the right products when they are not necessarily on the site that we merchandise on a daily basis. How do I merchandise on, if I am looking for a new pair of running shoes and I'm having a conversation with ChatGPT, how do I make sure that it is merchandised in the same way that it is merchandised on my website? So in the last 3 months, the landscape has changed dramatically.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And Google's share of search continues to fall month after month now, for the first time really in our professional time. And so the concept of not just generative engine optimization, but then the next level, right? So you've got a GEO after your SEO, but then you've also got to be able to merchandise it. And just for like I'm a 10-year-old, explain to me what merchandising online, what that means and what it looks like to me.
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's say you're shopping for some clothes, all right, and you go to the website of a retailer and you type in the word. You go to that search box because there's a lot of products in the catalog. You want to find the right product, and you go to that search box and you type in the word khakis. Now, khakis typically means a pair of pants,
Right.
right? It could be in different colors. So you would expect the website to show you pants of different colors. Now, if you use that search box to type the word khaki without the S, that represents a color. It's a type of brown.
All right.
And technically, you should be receiving products in that color, but not necessarily pants. They could be shirts, they could be t-shirts and whatnot.
Sure.
It is the merchandising function that makes sure that as a shopper, you receive the right results depending on your actions. In this case, you typed a specific word, and the merchandising function is what makes sure that you get the right experience.
I
You
love
know,
it.
instead of when you type in khakis, if you get brown shirts, that's not what you were looking for. That's
Yeah.
an
Right.
optimal experience for you as a shopper. So
Yeah.
merchandisers do this, and they're the ones who are the glue between the brand and the shopper. They understand what the shoppers do, they understand what the brand represents, and they are the connective tissue that connects both these world of intent. And ultimately, in our opinion, they are responsible for conversion. So it's a very important, critical function. In
I wish that you would do a seminar for Amazon, because I can't tell you the number of times that I've typed in something very specific, just like you've described, and then I get a whole bunch of riffraff that I don't want. That's people paying them to be placed instead of what I.
Yeah, it's a tough job. It's not easy to pull off.
Oh, so that's interesting. Yeah, I had that experience today where I'm looking for a floor for one of my tents. I go to Cabela's and I typed it in and it actually came up. And then they actually recommended something else that I needed, which was a second, an extra pole in case one of the poles breaks. It's like, wow, that's beautiful. That's how it's supposed to work, isn't it?
Exactly. If you're buying a pair of shoes, why not get a couple of pairs of socks to go with it?
Absolutely.
Right? And it's the merchandising function that's responsible for this to understand the fact that when someone's trying to buy shoes, that you also want to recommend a couple of pairs of socks because they tend to get bought together. While the data is available, it's the merchandiser who then interprets the data and then tries to figure out, okay, what do we make sure that the shopper sees in this case?
Yeah, and so those correlations can be done by scanning past orders, for instance, right? Can
Yeah,
be done because you are paying attention and you have some emotional intelligence and you understand human beings.
yeah.
Uh, is there AI involved in that process for you and what you're doing at Cynthia?
Yeah, predominantly it is now becoming very much AI driven because the amount of signals that is now available to us is it's not possible to process and find the connecting dots between these signals at a human scale.
Yeah.
The
How
the
many
number of
points are there right now that you're working with?
hundreds, hundreds of
Hundreds. Okay.
points at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Used to be a couple dozen. It was still okay and possible to do it in a spreadsheet.
Right.
But now the signals are so varied and so wide that it is necessary for the machine to take on the burden of processing those signals.
Yeah.
And AI comes into play where now we're at a point where previously machines were processing those signals and just displaying it to the merchandiser for the
Right.
merchandiser to make like interpret what that means and make appropriate merchandising decisions. But
Yeah.
now the technology has evolved so much that the machine can actually make that decision given the fact that it understands the brand, suggest that decision to the merchandiser for the merchandiser to go, yep, that sounds right, let's do that. That does
Right.
not sound right, let's not do that.
Yeah. So you're built merchandising agents, for lack of a better term, at this point,
Well,
right?
that is the term that we use. We are building merchandising agents. We
Yeah.
look at it as smart assistants to merchandisers. So the
Yeah. Like,
merchandisers have someone looking over their shoulders just making sure that, first of all, so that they don't have to do all the grunt work
Yep.
involved in merchandising. Just offload it to the robots, offload it to the machines to do all the grunt work,
Yep.
so that the merchandisers bring just their creative juices, the artistic aspect of merchandising to the job. And
Okay.
the second aspect being there's a lot of decision fatigue that the merchandisers have to shoulder because there's so many decisions that they have to make on a daily basis. And we offload some of those decisions to the machine, to the algorithm, so that the merchandisers are fresh. The cognitive load of the job does not bring them down. They
Yeah.
still have energy left and they can, they can get more stuff done essentially.
Love it. Yeah. Which is the to me the appropriate use, right? The grunt work goes to the machines, and the creative work stays with the humans.
Yeah, and that's the core purpose here. As much as one of our founding members like to say, let the robots do the robotic work.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That's perfect. Now, are you using machine learning that you've built yourself? Is that what Cynthium is based on, or are you using other tools that have already been built?
We have most of our tech is proprietary at this point.
Yeah.
Now, just to clarify, we do have heavy use of machine learning models that produce the results that we're producing, but we also leverage some of the large language models and some of the foundational models that are out there. We piggyback on them. So we're not building any foundational models ourselves. That for us, that is not where we play. What we do is we build the layer that sits on top of these foundational models, which is a much smaller piece of the architecture, but which is where sort of the rubber meets the road, which is
Right.
where the general purpose large language model intelligence gets translated to a industry specific or vertical specific actionable outcomes. So that layer is what we are focusing on from a product building perspective.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're making it relevant and valuable to
Yeah, yeah.
clients. Well, tell me a little bit about what your process for marketing, content marketing, new client acquisition. How are you using AI for your marketing?
Yeah. We are heavy users of AI in our in our own internal operations. Our marketing machine, we are a very small team. So if you take a look at our blog, or our presence on LinkedIn, you will see that we behave like we are a large organization. We have a fairly heavy content machinery that publishes not just on our blog, but also on Substack and other destinations pretty frequently. We're doing all this because our marketing philosophy is anchored around brand building and education,
Yeah.
not necessarily trying to build a demand generation machine at this point. Because what we believe is that if we, even before a potential customer engages with us in an official capacity, if we can already deliver value to them through educational content, through our marketing motion, then when the time comes to work with them, there will be some semblance of trust built in, some semblance of credibility built in to that relationship,
Absolutely.
and we don't have to like start from zero. So we're doing all of that now, where the marketing motion is very much heavily anchored around education, insights, without without for them to need to provide us anything back, not having to give us their email address or whatever. So that's our philosophy at this point. To do that, we pretty much use ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and a couple of internal automation tools that we use to build very Cynthium specific marketing personas that understand the space, that understand the market,
Yep.
that include some special knowledge bases that we built for ourselves. So it's not just generally based on what's available on the public internet.
So custom
Um,
GPTs, I think Cynthia
yes,
was
custom
talking about.
GPT. We don't have custom GPT, but it's a good analogy.
Right.
It's a customized persona that we build. We're not necessarily using custom GPT. Um, that includes those proprietary databases, which then helps us create content that is unique, that is very much opinionated, and very much anchored towards let's help people understand this world better. Let's give them a competitive advantage even before they work with us.
Right.
And that's sort of our philosophy of what we've been
I
doing.
like that. It's important. And I think you bring up a good point and a good philosophy, which is we know from study that B2B transactions, especially with large companies that you're dealing with, you're talking about 7 to 10 hours of research by a committee of people. And so you have to have you have to have content in many different forms to match the learning styles of everybody on the committee.
Yeah, and how do you consolidate the voice of each individual that contributes their knowledge base to creation of content, right? So we essentially channel all those voices into one persona that then helps us create a standardized tone, a standardized way of talking about things, a standardized way of structuring our content,
Yep.
and then it gets repurposed across multiple channels. One piece of blog content or one piece of white paper then gets spun off into a blog series, or we started doing videos this year into a video series. So it's a very structured way of aggregating knowledge, producing one sort of anchor asset from that knowledge, leveraging AI,
Yep.
and then leveraging the same AI, spinning off multiple threads from that same asset in different formats, some short form assets, some long form assets, and so on.
Nice. And then, what role is podcast guesting playing in that strategy right now?
A very important role, a very, very important role. Let's take LinkedIn as an example. We are very active on LinkedIn. And even though the algorithm and the rules of the algorithm are closely guarded, we know from observational anecdotal information that this year video-based content is getting a higher sort of is getting higher distribution from
Yep.
LinkedIn. So podcast guest participation is an important part wherein we not only, first of all, podcast is great because we get to share the same education first premise and we take it to market and we get to share that with a broader audience. But then we also get to take the outcome of that and then that gets spun off, it gets put into the same marketing machinery that we have, then gets spun off into short form videos, long form blog content, and so on and so forth.
Nice.
So for us, this is not just an opportunity for to have this conversation with you,
Right.
but the conversation is also input that can feed the marketing machine that we have. And it's a small team. When we say machine, it's literally a machine. It's literally a daisy chain set of tools and algorithms that take the content and pushes it through the different pipelines to generate different assets at the end of it.
Yeah. And then, are you using any off the shelf things to help with that process, or have you guys built the tools yourself?
Um, It's a combination of both, but the some of the tools that we like using, of course, everybody knows N8N,
Yep.
I presume. Phenomenal tool. Um, it's an interesting tool because you don't have to actually do any customizations to get started. They have all these templates that are available
Yep.
that you could potentially like sign up, just deploy one template and get started.
Yep.
We've been hearing a lot about this other tool called Lindy,
Yep.
um,
Yep. Heard of that.
and just started to experiment with it. Very similar, but seems to have a larger portfolio of integrations or connecting tools.
Nice.
Not really sure. No, we haven't actually quite tested it to its full extent yet, but that's on the cards for us to do at this point.
I get you. Let's see. What about what you have in terms of Cynthium and what your product roadmap looks like in the next 2 to 3 months?
Yeah, we are really focusing on what we're calling closed loop merchandising, where merchandisers are empowered with tools that help them merchandise both their on-site as well as their off-site presence, as in how they merchandise their products on their own website and how they merchandise their products on ChatGPT and Gemini and Perplexity and so on.
Right.
Within this world, now this is a net new concept because LLM-based shopping itself is new, right?
Sure.
So this offsite aspect is net new. However, the first step there, as with any new channel, is for a brand to assess and understand how they're currently being represented in that new channel. So, in a couple of weeks, at an upcoming conference in Salesforce in Chicago, we are planning to unveil a free assessment tool that any brand, they don't have to be our customers, but any e-commerce brand that's selling online can use to self-assess their presence on large language model Gen AI engines like ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini.
Nice. Yeah.
And that tool will help them understand if their brands and their products are being represented properly. Who are they sharing space with? Or are they sharing the conversation with the same competitors, or are there other we were running an assessment for a very popular, can't name the brand, but a very popular footwear brand. They
Okay.
are big in the sustainable footwear space. And their general sort of presence from a competition perspective, they position themselves as competing with the Nikes and the Adidases of the world. But turns out, when we ran the assessment, that in conversations within those ChatGPT conversations and those Gemini conversations, they were actually being compared by these models with other similar sized sustainable footwear themed brands,
Right.
which is not what they were doing in their general broad marketing efforts. So it was an interesting sort of observation to see, because they don't really have a direct control over these channels. So just surfacing that was an eye-opening experience for them. So that's why we feel like this assessment tool would be interesting for these brands, big or small, it doesn't matter, as long as you're just selling something online,
Yep.
it should be relevant.
It's interesting. Well, most of the people listening to this are probably not Fortune 1000 companies. So could you just give like one or two ideas about, let's say we use your tool, we see that we're not being represented correctly, and then what are kind of some of the action items that we would take in order to start feeding the generative engines what they need to understand our brands?
Absolutely. The very first thing that you would want to do is make sure that there is structured data available on the website. By structured data, what I mean is that let's say the product page. The product page today is very much optimized for human consumption,
Sure.
but brands have to think about, is it optimized for machine consumption, for the consumption of a large language model? So this is a very greenfield space at this point. There are not a lot of standards, but what we do know is the more structured and uniform the data is, the better it will be for large language models to parse through the data and consume it. Then this is a very tactical piece of advice. People can actually execute it tomorrow if they wanted to. Just like robots.txt and sitemap.xml, this notion of an LLMS.txt
Nice.
is emerging. Again, it's not approved, but
Right.
if you go to sites like Anthropic, for example, Anthropic has their own LLMS.txt published for themselves.
Nice.
So it's a way of structuring information to be able to then help these large language models consume that information and present that information to shoppers when they ask questions about your brand on these Gen AI engines. So that is something that you may want to look into as a brand.
I love it.
Again, it's not a universal standard, but still it's emerging.
Yeah, and so this would be a project that you could do, say, in Notebook LLM, where you say,
Yes,
please review my website as a GEO expert, or however you want to phrase it, and give me, 10 things to do in the next week in order to structure for A, B, and C LLMs, for instance.
yes, they can do that. The other thing they could do, and this is something that they can do themselves, is ask the engine how to optimize for the engine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the best way because I guarantee this, you will get different answers when you ask the question to Gemini versus ChatGPT versus Perplexity, because they all work and operate differently, even though they
Yeah.
feel the same. And asking the engine is just, it's a simple no-brainer. Just ask it. I am representing the brand name blah, and we sell XYZ.
Yeah.
We are usually a high value brand or a high price brand or low price brand. Just describe all the different characteristics of the type of products you're selling and who you're trying to sell to, be it salons or teenagers or whatever, and then just ask the engine to recommend how to optimize your brand's presence on that engine.
Love it. And I think that's like that little bit right there is what we never could do with Google, right? We could never figure out what Google wanted in such a simple and straightforward way. So I think that's what's cool about this age right now. Vinod, I really appreciate your time and expertise, and I would be happy to talk to you for another 2 hours, but I know you have some other things to do.
Emmanuel, this was such a pleasure talking to you. Never done a live one before. This is the first live experience. So definitely a unique one for me to participate in. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to have a conversation with you.
You betcha. It's been my pleasure, and I'm excited to get the link to the tool when you have that tool released, and I'll make sure it's in the show notes. And I appreciate your time, and good luck at the Salesforce meeting. And I would like to invite you to be on the show again in another few months and see what's changed for you, if that's okay.
Would love to. We'll talk more about this because this is a widely innovative time. So I'm sure if we circle back in a couple of months, things would be substantially different.
We have no idea how we might be able to order a robot in 3 months. Who knows?
Who knows?
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time today, and hang on for me while I wrap up the show, and I'll be able to say proper goodbye to you. Thanks. Vinod Kumar with some great ideas there. Number one, about using podcasts as a centerpiece of content marketing. So very powerful play there, and something worthy of reviewing for your own marketing. And then two, checking in, run a report and find out what which LLMs are getting the most traffic, and then start with the top and go in and ask each of those how to best structure your data so your products and services are represented correctly and quickly on each of those LLMs. I hope you found value in the episode today. My hope for you is that you take some time to find a way that AI can speed up some of your processes and you get some time back, and that you spend that time upskilling yourself for your professional endeavors, or that you use it to spend with your friends, your family, or to get outside and go experience some nature time. So Emmanuel Rose.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.